first workshop.
It's just saying.
We've had nobody sign up. We've had nobody sign up for public comment, so we will just go straight into the first agenda item. Well, Lindsay, did you have any updates or anything before we get started on the workshop agenda?
I don't. I have no updates. We're ready for our, I do want to say welcome back. We had our, as a district, we had for the first time, we were closed last week. And I want to say welcome back to the team. I see some faces I haven't seen for a few days. See some elementary principals that are back on contract, so welcome back to you guys. And just want to thank the board and our community for indulging us last week. I've received several text messages and emails from staff members that said that for the first time, even though they had taken time away in early July before, that for the first time last week, that knowing others were off too allowed them to fully disconnect. And they felt like there was a difference in their family and their engagement while they were away because they knew other people were away too. And so that was a gift to us as a district, and we don't take that lightly. So thank you very much, everybody, for allowing that for us. And so with that, we're back. We feel like we've reoriented for the last 2 or 3 hours, and we're back and ready for a workshop first thing on our first day back. And so we've got a few things for you. It is not a light lift at all, and so buckle up because we've got some academic data for you this morning. We have our high school EOC data and CCMR data to share with you guys this morning, as well as some survey data that we want to walk through with you. We did our annual parent and staff surveys late this spring. We also had our students complete our learner profile survey, and Wes is going to walk through those things with you. And then we're going to shift gears, a hard right, equally important and very much support learning, and talk about Bond 2021 work. It's actually an annual update. When we looked back, it was last July's workshop that we came in and did quite a bit of time talking with the board about the Bond 2021 projects. And so we're back to do that again. And this time we'll close it out with a little bit of future planning at the end of that as well. And so stop us at any point, as always, with questions and thoughts and comments. We are hopeful for a good discussion. And then when you're ready for a break in the middle or before the middle or whatever, tell us. Call Uncle.
Mercy.
Tell us.
Break
That's
or
right.
mercy?
Mercy, Uncle, however you want to call it.
That's right.
Tell us. Okay. It's all you, Mr. Vancheck.
All righty. So, like Lindsay said, we've got a brief presentation for you this morning.
Hold on, real quick. Do y'all wanna,
I was kidding.
I saw y'all drinks or anything?
Is there water up there?
Yes.
I didn't see any.
Yes, it's over in the corner.
Oh, that's why I said.
It's hidden by a
You keep
stack of
talking.
desserts, it looks like.
Okie
That's right. Amounts of
All right, so just a few important points before we get started, and we've got lots of graphs and charts and so forth to look at, but just kind of want to reorient to kind of where we're at in the landscape of school data and accountability and so forth. So you guys may remember back in March of 2023, we had a conversation in here talking all about the changing accountability system, and so just we're not going to go back through all that, but kind of the 3 big points of those changes is there was a new test, and so the test was redesigned. Everyone, you might have heard it around the state, called STAR 2.0. It has some new item types and new formats. There is a new rating system, and so a lot of the different domains had some new calculation methodologies that impact the ratings. And then there was a delayed timeline because of all of those changes. There were some cut score changes, and so that just kind of slowed the progression of available data down. And so what we have today is preliminary data for high school EOCs. And for our listeners and to Mr. Blankenship, EOC is an end of course, and those are oftentimes we talk about STAR and EOC together. EOCs, we're just talking about the courses that are for high school credit in biology, Algebra 1, English 1 and 2, and then U.S. history. It is preliminary. I say preliminary, not that we don't expect major changes, but the state even kind of goes through a slow cleanup process all the way up until September and beyond. And so if we looked at something in a couple of weeks or months and it's like 1% off here or 2% off here, that's kind of a normal tendency with this data. Let's see, we don't have grades 3 through 8 STAR yet. We won't get those until August 11th internally, and then we'll be able to turn those back to parents and families by August 16th. That's where there's a major delay. With EOC data, because it is graduation pending, the state had a little bit more expedited process to be able to turn that information around a little quicker. And then finally today, we're going to look at overall performance, and then we'll look at performance by different student groups. And so normal statement here is please, by all means, ask questions. Stop me if there's something that I don't make sense on. I've got some teammates up here, and I've asked them to do the same thing to make points that I miss or clean up something that I mess up. So with that, we'll get started, and we're going to look at, this is overall, and you guys have everything that's on the screen before you. It might be a little small on the printouts, but overall GISD EOC performance. So we're looking at comparing how we did last year compared to this year, and this is each of the 5 EOCs, approaches, meets, and masters. Reminder about kind of how those buckets work. The approaches category has all students that passed at any level. So anyone that scored in the meets category is also in the approaches. Anyone that's in the masters is in meets and approaches, right? So those percentages don't add up to 100%. Yeah. So it's approaches and above, and then it's meets and above, and then masters and masters. Yeah. So the orange bar on the left of each of the areas is the 2022 data. The blue bar is the 2023, and so there's some kind of obvious improvement at most of those indicators. You can kind of see that some major jumps at the approaches level. Even at the meets, we have a few jumps at the masters, a couple of falls at the masters level, but overall we saw a pretty strong improvement in performance across the board in our EOCs, which I think we're excited about that. I want to, yeah, thank you.
It's maybe a dumb question, forgive me. If a student falls from masters down to approaches, does that count as improving the percentage of approaches?
Technically, yes. Yeah, so that student would then be in the approaches bucket, no longer the masters.
So some of the increase in approaches was once masters and is now
Could be.
stepped back.
Could be. Yep. Yep. And I'm gonna make some random pauses just to allow for questions to percolate.
One thing that just stands out to me is that number one, those all look pretty good.
Yeah,
but
those are great.
U.S. history, frankly, is rather phenomenal. Do we have a phenomenal history department, or is that test easier than the others statewide?
You know, that's a pretty common trend for the U.S. history test. I wouldn't say that it's any easier than the others. It is a little bit more discrete in the style of questioning, that it's questioning more factual-based information as opposed to kind of skill-based, where some of your math and English would be. It's also taken at the junior level in high school. And so these students have progressed through 3 years of high school, arguably obtained a lot of different knowledge along the way. And so it's later in high school. So I wouldn't say that it's easier, but that is certainly a trend that it generally maintains a little bit higher performance
I can see, though, that
than math and writing.
would be a different type
Right.
than algebra.
Yes.
Right.
Would obviously involve a lot more thinking, and history could just be dates and per people and so on like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Stephen, even the state and the region was at 95%.
Yeah, so our scores were equal to those.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was good.
All right.
Yeah. So that's pretty well on
It's a
trend.
different kind of test.
Can I go back to Anthony's question?
Yeah.
I think that actually it
Yes.
doesn't change.
Because
It's
it's not,
already-
yeah, because this is different, those were students that took it in 2022, these are students that took it in 2023. It's not the same student
Students.
from 22 to 23, completely different group of students.
And let's say on the U.S. history, that 95% already takes into account the masters.
Exactly.
So if he
Yes.
falls out of it, the
Yes.
masters would go down,
Yes.
but the approaches would stay the same.
Yes.
I believe, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I misunderstood the question.
Oh.
I was just thinking statically.
Yeah, no
Yes.
worries. Thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
totally fair that you're
The
confused
big
about that.
bucket.
Yeah, it is.
Years.
The big bucket is the approaches. And the others.
And you said that, it's a start.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It takes a while to wrap around.
Yeah, it's gonna take a while.
All right, we're going to take a look at how we compare to the state. The next few charts, we're going to look at the approaches level individually. We'll look at the meets level individually, and then the masters level. So this is showing 22, 23. each of the EOCs at the approaches level, and this is considered passing for students. So if a student hits the approaches level, they're kind of cleared to move on, and they get credit for that in terms of graduation requirements. And so kind of what you're looking at, a couple of things. You can look at the gap, if you will, between the orange and the blue in 22, and then compare that gap or lack of gap in the 23 bars. And so you can definitely see we've made some ground in a lot of areas. We've eliminated the gaps in a lot of areas, and then still have some room to go for sure. Algebra and well, really, algebra is where the main kind of gap at this level kind of remains. It's certainly shrunk. I want to say 18% down to 8% of a difference. So making some progress there. And so this is at the meets grade level. So this is just the students that performed at the meets or above grade level. Meets and master's grade level. So same concept that we're looking at basically is kind of looking at the 22, difference between GISD and state performance compared to the 23. A couple of spots we outperformed the state by 1% or so. A couple of spots were right at the exact same, and then there's still some areas for improvement.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
On the algebra, when y'all have sat down and talked about the difference on that, what are the factors that you think are contributing to that difference? Is it a for those kiddos, is it coming in that they're not as strong as they need to be? Is it that retention of algebra teachers is, when you kind of sat down and debriefed on this, what did y'all come up with?
And we've been kind of looking at this for a while.
I figured you probably have.
In terms of a couple of years.
Yeah.
And so speaking generally, not necessarily just master's or approaches, but just in general.
And just in general.
A couple of things that we've seen that I think we also made some changes, and I say we, these are campus level changes more so, but had to do with who was teaching algebra. And what supports were provided to those teachers and to those students, and so making some changes there, I think has kind of contributed to them. I don't know if you want to add a little bit to that.
I was going to say that who was teaching algebra, and then also we've put a lot of intention around just a collaborative for some of our algebra teachers, particularly at Eastview. They work strongly with some of our coordinators on kind of a personalized learning collaborative. And so we feel like that's contributed to some of the growth. And just all around intentionality of the resources and instructional practices in general has contributed to it. And so moving forward, we're looking at scheduling recommendations if kids need to be double blocked, that sort of thing to help increase. As we see a trend in kids that are maybe hadn't shown algebra readiness, like double blocking them so that we can work on their deficit skills and that sort of thing and fill in the holes that way.
Sounds good.
And sort of like an MTSS, not sort of, it is an MTSS model of instruction.
Okay, thank you.
And I know, we've talked about it, and I know this, it's tough to pin down anything onto one variable, and largely there's not one variable that influences everything necessarily, so it's kind of what's the triangulated approach, and so that's been kind of the constant work.
That's good.
So same piece, just looking at the master's level, master's grade level. This is there's some areas here where the gap still remains a little bit wider. It represents some areas to focus on. I know if Terry were here with us today, she would talk about the scarcity of resources, and when you push hard over here, sometimes it pulls back over here and so forth. And so I would hesitate to say that that's what's going on here necessarily, but there's a lot of work to ensure more kids are passing the test and being successful on it. That gives room for opportunity now to go a little deeper in some areas. Okay, so switching gears now, and we're looking at specific student groups. What I do want to say, and Tiffany's going to piggyback here in just a few moments, is when we kind of think about groups of students and how do we ensure that all students are learning, we just want to be really clear that when we intervene and help students learn and be successful, we do that at an individual level, right? And so we don't treat a student a certain way because they belong to a particular group that the state disaggregates the data, right? So we're looking at it by groups and seeing trends, but when it comes time to intervene and help a student, that's based on the individual, unique characteristics of that student and their needs, as opposed to, you're in this group, so we're going to do something to you, right? And the reason I want to call that out is oftentimes we're encouraged to take a different approach, right? And maybe bring all the students that fit a particular profile and do something to them. Do something sounds weird, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Provide an intervention. Okay, so just wanted to clarify. So this.
We're not doing anything.
All right, keep moving.
Sorry, moving on. Okay, so economically disadvantaged student group, this is just the percent passing. So, obviously the data extrapolates out to percent meets and masters as well. This is the percent of passing. Year over year, so this is 22 to 23, same concept apply. We see some strong improvement with these students, and this is definitely a strong indicator. Historically, this is a strong correlation that these types of tests, STAR tests, lots of standardized tests, probably the strongest correlation is to this group of students, the students that are impoverished or have lower SES at home. Generally don't do as well, and that's not a Georgetown trend, Texas trend, that's a national, international trend generally. So to see this improvement, that's certainly a positive. Next is the Hispanic student group. We see a similar trend. And again, just you guys stop me as you please. Our white student group. I will say a caveat that we learned in some TEA conversation last year was that there's been a lot of efforts to make progress in different demographic groups, and kind of across the board what was actually falling was the white student performance was falling off and others picking up, and there was a teased out nuance of something that needs to be paid attention to. That was a state level trend. Our African American student group, percent passing. Our Asian students. Now switching gears away from a racial and ethnic demographic into more program specific, so our students that are served by ESL, so these are students that are emergent bilingual, and the performance you see there on the screen, percent passing going up. One caveat to that at the English 2 level.
No, that would be expected.
That's a trend, right? English and math tend to be a struggle for our students served in ESL. And then our students served by 504 services. And just for a clarifying piece, students served by 504 have some form of a disability that justifies some accommodations in the classroom. That can range from more explicit directions to extra time on a test to a quieter testing room, any range of those things. These students are not served under special education, but they do have accommodations under 504.
Would dyslexia be in that group?
Well.
Yes, the one.
It's currently in both.
It's in both.
Right, it is currently served both in 504 and special education, but that shift is just now occurring. It is most typically over the years been served in 504, but it is now recently moving into the special education world, more so than it has in the past.
Yep. All right, and then looking at special education. You guys may recall, I don't know, it was a couple months ago or weeks ago that we were working through the last year's designation level with special education. There was a data error on TEA's side, and got them to see the error of their ways and fix it and so forth. And I think this is indicative of continued work in progress with our special education folks. So, be interesting to see how the RDA shakes out this year.
Ready for the first time, I'm kind of looking forward to that.
And the RDA is the result.
If you can ever look forward to that.
Yeah, it's hard. Look at that US history.
Yeah, yes,
Major jumps in there.
yes.
Yes. Alrighty, so that's kind of the conclusion of EOC graphs and charts for now. I wanted to pitch it to Jen and Tiffany to kind of talk about, and I know we kind of stepped into this a little bit ago, but just share a little bit of the highlights of what we feel like contributed to some of this growth.
So I'm Jen Carney, Director of Teaching and Learning, and I just thinking about the data and what it represents. The one word that comes to my mind is intentionality, and so what this slide shows is kind of the outline of that. But we've already addressed it. Some of the campuses have included instructional changes so that the fit is better for the students, right? Where they're getting teachers with a desire and a want to teach, like for example, Algebra 1 and that sort of thing. So that has obviously impacted instruction greatly. Intentional instructional strategies through continuous professional learning offerings to enhance literacy skills in all content areas. We know literacy can't just be held to our English language arts classrooms, and we know that most of our exams are literacy-based exams. And we know that the real world, more importantly, requires kids to be competent and be able to synthesize multi-text and understand what they're reading and be able to respond to it. And so including really intentional instructional practices around those types of things in all contents, like balanced literacy in our language arts classrooms, and then the 5E model of instruction, which our social studies and our science classrooms definitely utilize, and they engage in, which means that students kind of go through this process, and that's outlined on this slide. In our science classrooms, one of the tools that teachers can use in their toolkit is argument-driven inquiry, and it's a writing and reading application of what they're doing in science, and we offer that training often at all our grade levels, but we hit it hard last summer at our high school as well for our high school's teachers. And then I already mentioned the personalized learning collaborative. We can't ignore attendance if kids are present. Odds are they're going to learn better, and so we've taken just intentional actions around that. We know that our curriculum documents are just one-dimensional pieces of paper, but it's the instruction that happens over the course of time that lends itself to kind of that systemic process of learning. And I do feel strongly, I hate to keep using COVID as an excuse, but COVID interrupted that. And now I feel like we're back on track again, and teachers are leaning on those documents and are using the instructional practices that I just mentioned and implementing our curriculum, which creates kind of this systemic process through the lens of a vertical experience kids experience in school. And that's when that happens, that's when we deliver a viable and guaranteed curriculum. And then we have to just give tons of credit to our coordinators, not just our academic content coordinators, but our SPED coordinators and our bilingual coordinators, and just their willingness to work together to make this all come to life. So I would, that's just kind of the general big picture of some of the things that we're doing and will continue to do as well.
And so, then for my world, intentionality is a good word, but I know for us, a lot of it becomes targeted because we're talking about students that have additional needs. And, in addition to the effective strategies in curriculum, instruction, and attendance, these are some of the things that we feel have made significant improvements in our student scores. We were super excited to see the growth in students and to see that the efforts from the coordinators, from the campuses, from our teaching groups to see that kind of growth. First one is going to be with 504. There's been a real targeted focus. Wes mentioned the different accommodations that can be made for students that are served by 504. And one of the things that sometimes would occur would be that students would have a 504 plan and it would have some things in there, and sometimes it was used with fidelity and sometimes it wasn't. So there's been a big focus on really targeting and making sure that we are assessing, are those accommodations what the student needs? If not, let's fix it and get them the accommodations that they need so that they have every opportunity to be successful. Use it throughout the year so that when they get in that test, they have the same accommodations that they've been using all year. It's not a surprise, and they just perform better. They're more comfortable, they're more at ease, and they just are able to do better. So we know that that's one part to making sure that students are getting the supports that they need in 504. And then with regards to, in particular, our special education students, we talk a lot about services, not programs. You know, we have different ways that we serve our special education students, and they are services, they are not programs. And so part of that is getting them in the mainstream setting to the greatest extent possible. That gives them access to grade level content. It allows them more information than if we're teaching them at the grade level that they're performing. You can teach them at the grade level they're performing, but if you don't give them access to the content, they're not prepared for that test. So there's been a lot of intentionality around that. And you know, the fact that our students have had one-to-one devices and we've gone to assess through testing on the devices, they're more comfortable with it. They know how to do that. They know how to utilize it. And again, comfort with a student that struggles, that's so important. So that's been a real big focus for us. Then as far as kind of aligns with keeping students in the mainstream, we have a strong PLC culture, which is our professional learning community, where our teachers across the district come together and they really talk about what are we getting in front of students? What are we making sure that they have that's at the level that they can really comprehend? And we're starting to really see the results of that. We have our special education learning design coaches that have been able to provide supports to teachers in their lesson design to, again, help the students understand the content at a greater and deeper level. And then for our ESL students, there was a focused initiative to provide tutoring twice a week for all of our ESL students throughout the year. And you know, if you're struggling with the language, to have access to it outside of just the normal day when it's so intensive, it just makes a big difference that they can actually be able to take that content in. So those are the things that we've done that we're really proud of, because we see that it's making a difference for kids and their performance and what they're able to do. So that's kind of what we've been doing.
Thank you all. So kind of talking just quick takeaways. Obviously we saw some definite growth in the EOCs. We've closed and eliminated some gaps compared to the state. Certainly still have some room to go in some areas, we know that for sure. We will continue to unpack this data to kind of understand the specific nuance to be able to provide the supports for the specific campus needs. And then we'll use this information as we continue to use this information in campus and district improvement planning over the next several weeks. So, before we shift gears, we're going to talk CCMR. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to applaud what I'm hearing, because if you have 900 kids in special ed, you have 900 different programs. It's more about the individual child. Special ed is not a program. 504 is not a program. Getting people to understand that is very, very difficult. Now you even had a little wooden fence, and I said, this fence is the barrier that we need to help get the children over so they can fully actualize what they want to do. So thank you for using that vocabulary, because I really think it's making a big change, and I see the results, so thank you. Thank you both.
I think
You
across the board you see it. Your hard work is paying off, and we harp on all the issues that we have, but we don't really take the time to celebrate what we're doing. So congratulations on the good work.
Thank you.
What I really appreciate today is taking the time to disaggregate the data by different groups. And the time that you spent doing that preparation is very much appreciated. Really appreciate that.
Definitely a team effort on that aspect. I would say
I
that for
imagine
sure.
it has
Lots
been,
of folks.
Yes.
Punching lots of buttons.
That's right. I imagine it was. Yes.
And lots of folks
Thank you.
reformatting.
Thank you very much for doing it. Yes. Glad to see it.
At the, you're going to
No, I'm a sports guy, so I wanted to cheer, but it felt inappropriate. Yeah, let's go, man. Let's go. I'm looking at these like, I'm excited. Should I not? Because I'm feeling excited. This is awesome.
Be excited.
Yeah, great job.
All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit and talk about college, career, and military readiness. So just a little bit of background information for anybody that this is new information. It's not quite as simple as a biology OC necessarily, but CCMR is made up of several different metrics to determine college readiness, career readiness. We're going to put a pause on military readiness. We're not using that data right now. It's coming back in the future, but not quite yet. But there are several indicators, and kind of one of the big umbrella indicators is the Texas Success Initiative, or TSI. The TSI exists outside of K through 12 public education. It kind of wraps in higher education as well. But specifically to TEA's accountability, you have TSI Math and TSI Reading. In the TSI Math and Reading, there's a couple of tests that are made up in there. There's the TSIA, which is the assessment that a student can show their readiness. The ACT, the SAT also can be included in there. And then the college prep courses. So if a student completes a college prep course in math or a college prep course in reading, then that contributes to their TSI readiness. This one particular set of metrics, you've got to satisfy both reading and math for it to count as CCMR ready. So we'll look at those. All of the bullets below are all one-offs. So if a student satisfies any one of the bullets below, that equals CCMR. So they can score a 3 or higher on an AP exam, a 4 or higher on an IB exam. We don't have IB exams, just FYI. Not yet. No foreshadowing there. Not foreshadowing. It's growth mindset. Completing dual credit courses is also a way to gain CCMR points. If they obtain an industry-based certification, we call them IBCs, so you'll see IBC all over the paperwork. That's an industry-based certifications. Those are associated with our CTE programs. On-ramps is another dual credit course type scenario through the University of Texas. We've seen really good success with this program and are liking the trajectory that that's on. If a student earns an associate's degree, we don't offer associate's degrees right now. Right now our vein is more through the CTE IBCs. And then the special education workforce readiness and the special education advanced graduation plan are also the ways that our students served in special education can be indicated as college, career, military ready. So we'll take a look at these. Just one big note here is you may remember back in March, this was an area that received a lot of change in the accountability system. There was a major scaling change here. So our 74% of 2022, which scored an A for us, would score a C in the 2023 accountability. So a pretty major changes there. All right, so this is looking overall. This takes us back. Oh, and I don't know if I said it, but it just this is based on last year's graduates. So it is a year in lag. So 2023 accountability is 2022 graduates, so on and so forth. So this is a short historical trend. 2023, looking at some impacts from COVID there, no doubt. Jumped up to 74 this year. We're looking at a 73%, and so we look at that, kind of scratch our heads and wonder, okay, we're kind of flatlined in there. What's going on? Now the unique thing is these are students that have been long gone. They've been gone from us for a year, so it's an interesting kind of mind game to try to get ahead of this. So to ask those questions, we jump in and first we ask who. Is there a particular who or a group of students that we're seeing a drop in their CCMR status or a rise? And you kind of look across the board and we see a subtle drop in some areas. You see a pretty significant jump in our African American student population. You see a jump in the 2 or more races. You see kind of a drop in a few others. And so honestly, this initial look isn't super conclusive. And so kind of our next question is, okay, well, let's look at kind of indicators or programs and see what's going on there. And that's what we've got on this slide. kind of bear with me, there's a little more lines on this screen than I'd like, but it kind of tells the full picture of what's going on with the indicators over time. So the thick blue line with the data labels, that's our overall CCMR rate. So we see that 65, 60, 74, 73. The TSI reading and math, that's the orange bar. That's the one where students are meeting both the TSI math and the TSI reading. That's how they're getting their CCMR status. The dashed lines are the components of that. So the gray dash is TSI reading, the orange dash, yellow dash is TSI math. And then I will say, kind of as an unofficial kind of position on CCMR, we believe all of our kids should be TSI ready. That's a literacy and numeracy, kind of indicator. And whether a student's going into the workforce, into college, in the military, that's an area that we always want to see those numbers going up. And that is it's not a one indicator metric. There's a test involved, or there can be testing, there can be course completion. So that's why you see those numbers a little bit closer to the overall CCMR rate. Some of the other indicators towards the bottom of the graph are a little bit more nuanced based on student choice. Whether they're choosing to be in an AP program, or they're choosing dual credit programs, or they're choosing CTE programs and IBCs. So that's kind of why you see them generally a little bit lower population. The one blue line that you see kind of on a steep rise is our IBCs. I believe this year we're sitting at, 34% of our graduates earned an IBC. The orange line towards the bottom is the on-ramps program that I mentioned with UT. And so we've seen a steady rise in on-ramps participation and completion, and a little bit of a decline in AP course offerings. And so we're seeing a lot of success. I think that's also kind of a trend on trend with the state. UT is kind of onto something with this on-ramps program. I think they get a UT credit, UT diploma, and a high school diploma. For an Aggie sitting over here saying that's a good thing, must be a good thing. And so excited to see just kind of how those course offerings go. I will say, coupled with the on-ramps program is some really solid professional learning for our instructors that instruct the courses as well.
Just roughly, just ballpark, of that 73 or 74% that are college or career ready, how many is college ready and how many are career ready?
I don't have that
I'm
particular
just
metric. We can get it. That
just
is one that
ballpark.
we'll get.
I mean, is it like 50-50 or is it 70-30 or?
So the TSI is generally, that's kind of in the suite of college readiness.
Okay,
right.
All right.
And so in which a lot of the metrics on the screen are mostly in that college readiness, and college more of an academic sense.
Right.
The IBC is more of that's about the only way. That one and the special education workforce readiness are the two career readiness indicators. I would say that literacy and numeracy are also career readiness indicators. Right.
Well, that's really encouraging that the IBC certifications are going up.
Yes.
That much. That's real encouraging, because that tells you your vocational program is really doing
strong and growing.
Doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. Yeah.
Thank you for this chart. This is helpful.
Sure.
While we're here, one thing that I heard it stuck out a lot at the Summer Leadership Initiative was different districts having trouble figuring out exactly how to nail down the military readiness piece. So out of curiosity and for my own information, when people ask, how are you guys tracking that in Georgetown? How are we? Is it when someone signs up? Is it when they go to MEPS? Is it NASBAB test?
Yeah. So that's why that data is not in the accountability system for now. It was previously, and previously it was intent to enlist. And so the way that looked was if a student had a conversation with a recruiter, then they were marked as military ready. And so kind of what was happening was put a recruiter in front of a room full of 500 graduates, and all of a sudden, 100% were military ready.
Yeah.
That shifted. They shifted away from that, obviously, into students that were enlisted. And so we were obtaining that data from the students and from the military, through the school side. The state was having a hard time getting the information from the DoD, and so there was kind of this data clash. And that's when they took it out. The exception is, I think, the Texas Army National Guard. They were kind of willing to play data-wise, right? They were like, well, if we have any students that come into our program, we'll let you know. So that is coming back around. So they've reached some data sharing agreement. But previously, we were tracking it through literally students, graduation planning and marking that, confirming with, that they did actually enlist, like they would show us their enlistment paperwork. But then since they removed that, then our tracking of it is, we track and celebrate the students that are going into the military. It just doesn't contribute to the accountability ratings right here. Yeah, but it's been quite a journey.
Thank you.
And it was one of those that kind of got gamed. And that's what we'll talk just a moment about the IBCs. There have been some IBCs, industry-based certifications, that some schools have taken a similar approach, right?
Yeah.
Everybody gets this certification, and it's something, I don't want to bash any IBC, but some of them that are being sunsetted, like Microsoft Office Word. Some of those that
Right.
Yeah, they talk
in the
about
modern
that
era
at
are
the
pretty
Institute.
synonymous, right?
Yeah.
This is the same information that kind of populates the graph, so we don't have to spend much time here. But just in case you want to kind of look at it numerically over time, these are those numbers. I will just the light blue shading are the only two that are components of that TSI reading and math together, right? And so the 72%, 56% of meeting either TSI reading or TSI math, those contribute into the TSI reading and math piece. So that's why they're kind of teased out separately. All the other indicators are, like I said, the one-off indicators, and so if a student checks one of those boxes, they check CCMR. All right, so some takeaways, next steps. We see progress in on-ramps and the IVCs, like I mentioned. What we need to do is unpack the indicators based on students that are not meeting TSI math and reading, try to understand who that is specifically. We have a lot of students that they may not meet TSI reading and math, but they meet it on IVC. And so we kind of need to find the gap of who's not getting an IVC and is missing TSI math specifically, or TSI reading, to understand, are there certain trends? Is it a programming issue? Is it a course issue? We do know that the master schedule impacts this because course completion for like college prep math and college prep reading, if we have to close a section for any number of reasons that influences master schedule, that can contribute to an impact on CCMR also. So kind of analyzing those results, talking with our high school principals, and just making sure that we're staffing just what we need to be able to staff in terms of sections for courses that impact this as well. That's kind of our takeaways on CCMR is really unpacking and seeing who's not becoming CCMR.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Do you ever break it down male, female? Do you ever look at it?
In like our taper and stuff, there's some male and female. I would say I haven't spent a lot of time personally looking male and female. There's certainly some nuance in our IBC programs that may be a little bit more male or female oriented, but that's a good question. We haven't been disaggregated that way too much. Yeah.
Thanks.
We did have a request for some information related to the sunsetting IBCs, and so if you'll remember back in March, there was some points about the IBCs that are going away. They're kind of cleaning up the IBC world in CCMR. It doesn't have a major effect in Georgetown. Fortunately, we knew this was coming. Kind of sounds a little bit goofy, but that was the case. There are 112 some odd IBCs being sunsetted. A lot of those are pretty irrelevant in 2023, and that's why they're kind of closing the gate on that. We did have two, the OSHA 30-hour construction, and then the Microsoft Office Word. You'll see in 21-22 the number of students that were impacted by that, 3 and 28, and then in 22-23, 5 and 0. There is kind of a replacement OSHA certification that we'll be utilizing that'll still allow students to obtain that certification, because that's a handy one. That allows students to go into several different fields and an employer not have to worry about that, right? The Microsoft Office Specialist was taken through our Business Information Management course, or BIM course. That's part of our program of study for BIM. We don't offer the IBC in 22 because the majority of the students were sophomores, and we needed to find ways to get more completers, and we'll talk in just a second about what a completer is, and connect them into an IBC. So every program of study in Georgetown does provide the opportunity for a student to earn at least one IBC. So students and parents were notified of this at the beginning of last school year, so they would know that this was coming down the road. Students over Charlotte were told about that OSHA certification is no longer being offered, and provided information about what would be offered for them. And then all of I mentioned this, but which CTE programs are built out to produce completers. A completer is a student that takes 3 or more classes for 4 or more credits. There are quite a few courses in CTE. There are 2 credit courses. And so we have 22 programs of study and 10 different career clusters, and each of those enables a student to become a completer. And really what that means is, do you have the beginning level course throughout the final level course, kind of the practicum level course in all of your programs of study, which we do. We're trying to move away from kind of one-off courses and try to make sure that there's a way for a student to have a pathway towards, and it just kind of that continuum of the learning, if that makes sense, whether that's floral design or engineering.
So that means early on, you sort of need to pick which direction you're going instead of just taking a plethora of, I think I'll do this and I think I'll do that, and that looks interesting. And sort of, there's some counseling, like you sort of need to be moving toward getting.
The point you mentioned, the advising aspect is very important, because we want to walk both sides of that line of student choice and exploration. We want them to be able to take a course that you're interested in for the sake of being interested in it.
Yeah.
Even if you think you have different career aspirations, that's okay too. We also want to show them the benefit of jumping into a sequence at the right time and being able to follow that to kind of completion. It does affect the funding aspect for the CTE programs, but that's kind of, we want to be careful that we don't just force kids into a pathway for a financial sake.
Yeah.
And we also, it's okay to take a course that you're interested in for the sake of interest. We want to create that pathway that allows continuity, though. Yeah. And that's an advising conversation. You're absolutely right. Yeah. All right. So that's kind of the conclusion of EOC and CCMR data-wise. Want to have just a few reminders before we switch gears and start talking survey data. And this is kind of coming back around to the table, talking about the accountability refresh. We've got some communication plans that we've stood up some new aspects. We've got more coming in the next few weeks. Obviously, the next 10 weeks or so will be important in regards to accountability ratings coming out. They're not coming out to the end of September, but just a reminder, I think that it bears repeating about the 3 major changes that came on board with the refresh. And the first being the STAR 2.0, the change to the test and the requirement for online testing. I think that affected school districts a little bit differently than it did in Georgetown. We've been doing online testing for a little while, fortunately, so there's a little bit less of a learning curve in that regard. There's new cut scores being set. That's kind of created the delay. Those cut scores are set after the test is done, just a clarifying point there. We saw a lot of accountability rating methodologies changed. We rehashed those back in March. We looked, graduation scales was scaled down, right? And so what that means is it's going to take higher performance to achieve a certain rating of A, B, or whatever. The largest one is in CCMR. That's the greatest scale change. It's a 47% swing, all in 1 year on students that are living life, right? They're long gone. They graduated in 2022. Yet, the system will be judged based on different rules after they're long gone. The timeline available for data, we'll get, like I said earlier, grades 3 through 8 STAR, August 11th, coming to parents August 16th. Accountability ratings are the end of September. I think they have the 28th as the day. It'll probably be the end of the 28th at some point, but that's coming the end of September. Generally, we get those around August 15th, so about a 6-week delay on So where can I go to find more information? We've got some updates on the GISD assessment webpage. Got a QR code on there, but I don't know
Oh, yeah.
where
It's
to
on the
refresh.
So you've got it.
So you got it on a printout.
Yeah, we got
Okay.
it.
And the slides that we post will have a QR code so folks can easily go to the webpage, not have to find the actual URL. But we'll have more information coming there this week. Anytime we get information, whether it's related to something TEA pushes out or just information that we produce, we'll load it on the webpage. We'll also send it out via e-news. So to any of our listeners, parents, etc., jump online for e-news. If you're not getting e-news, maybe you clicked the button and said you didn't want it, but now you do. So I can empathize. So take a look, sign up for e-news. And then just kind of specifically about state accountability, what's next. And really it's more communication. We're going to spend some more time the next 2 months, really July and August, talking with our district leaders and our campus leaders about maybe not the super deep nuance of these changes, but here's what you need to know, here's what you need to be prepared for. Because they're district leaders, assigned to different campuses. We'll be sending out, we'll have more communication with our parents and our community as well, specifically through e-news, through superintendent emails, and through the updates to the webpage, and through social media as well. So just to any parents or anyone that's listening, or as you guys are engaging with parents, I hope that you'll point them back. We'll have information on the assessment website. We'll continually update that information, and then we'll also push it out when we have new info as well. So hopefully folks have lots of different ways to get the information that they need, whether that's specifically to their student and their student's information, or about just the changes in general. So accountability handbook is coming out in fall of 2023. So the accountability ratings will come out in September and the handbook will come out in fall. They're finalizing it.
Yeah.
It's gone through several iterations, but that's the world that we live in.
What's wrong with our phone?
Dude, Wes, why does it say F?
It says fall 23.
That just says F.
Our paper says fall.
I looked back at my paper. There it is. Thank you, Lana. So just more info, but really just want to, we're going to be procuring, kind of providing more information to our community, to our family. Point them to our website, point them to the assessment website, tell them to jump on e-news if they're talking to you. And of course TEA has been pushing out some information as well. But that's where we are on EOC and CCMR and state accountability. Before we switch gears, just want to open the floor for any other comments or discussion or questions.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
You bet.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You guys probably know, you have your finger on the pulse. What is the district leadership, campus leadership? What's kind of like the immediate feedback on these changes in the accountability system? Because Dr. Benoit and I were down at SLI, and I don't know if you remember, Stephen, it got pretty contentious at the accountability portion. I mean, they never had to call security.
I'm glad that we only have to do that every 2 years, because
Yeah.
it's always that way.
It's always that way.
So, before I encourage y'all to stay encouraged, I want to, during this process, because as you alluded to earlier, some of the changes are pretty significant, and they're kind of arbitrary, right? To say, well, you were this and now you're that. Do you have kind of any feedback from staff and other leadership on how that's being received?
I mean,
Or is it not being felt yet?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's a little bit of it, but there's probably a air of tension, wondering, what's the response going to be? Is our community going to understand that we're improving? We've made some progress in some areas. However, our ratings indicate otherwise, and that's as challenging of a piece as that's really kind of what it is. Our high schools are obviously the ones affected more by the CCMR changes. There are some scaling changes in some of the star areas. There's some methodology changes with kind of some growth measures, which we'll talk about when we get them in September. But I think it's there's certainly the air of frustration. But at the end of the day, we don't have a whole heck of a lot of recourse.
It is what it is.
It is what it is in a lot of ways, and so the matter is we have the ownership of try to inform and communicate, be transparent with the information, and trust that the relationships we have with our stakeholders will kind of persist through this trauma.
And it happens every time they revamp the test. This happens, the cut scores, nothing is new, and it's not just affecting us, it's affecting everybody. So
Sure.
it is what it is, and communicate.
Thank you.
Sure. Dr. Reynolds, did you have, was that
No,
just,
no,
just
no.
a sigh?
That was just a sigh, just
Just-
fighting Alexis.
All right. Okay, so we're gonna switch gears a
Well,
little
let's
bit.
take a
Do we
break.
need to
I
take a
think
quick
this
break?
is good, yeah, this is a good break point.
I'll use water.
Before we get into the survey. All right, gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, so we're gonna switch gears, maybe a little bit more abbreviated on this chunk, because I know we've got quite a bit of
Because
information.
Landon's glaring.
That's, he is staring me down. All right.
He's like, I've had to sit up here the whole time.
That's
All right.
right. Decoration.
So each year, we send out a parent-staff survey. It's kind of a climate and culture survey, just to try to understand just kind of how we're doing, how are things going. It is administered to all parents and all staff. It's open for 3 weeks in May. This year, our response rates are down a little bit from last year. I think that could be attributed probably to two things. One is the timing of the survey was a little bit later this year. We've also surveyed our community and our staff quite a bit this year with the strategic direction work.
Superintendent search.
And the superintendent search, so they've been tapped quite a bit, and so I suspect some of that's reflected here as well. The alignment use, the parent survey items are aligned to the strategic direction focus areas, at least 1, 2, and 4. We didn't have any items this year aligned to focus area 3 yet, so that's an opportunity for us moving into next year. And this is used in our comprehensive needs assessment and our improvement planning processes. We'll jump in there. So looking at the parent survey first, quick overview, net promoter score of 7, which is a strong promoter score. Shows just a distribution of the grade level of the parent surveys, a pretty even distribution there as well.
Now, parents would mean if there are 2 parents in a household, each parent would turn in a survey.
They can, or they can sit together and do it themselves.
So for 13,000 students, we might have 10,000 parents.
I think that's fair.
Is 1,300 enough to be statistically valid?
I can run a different analysis. We can check that aspect of it. It's a little bit lower than we like to see.
Yeah.
You know, we've been upwards of 2,500
Yeah.
previously, and felt a lot more confident about that. Yep. So the question on the screen, just like what you've got in your packet, might be a little easier to see. I apologize, they may have printed off a little bit small for you guys. But student learning growth in progress, these are kind of just obviously seeing how it's going. So my child's appropriately challenged by school, adequately prepared for future success. My school provides support for my child's unique learning needs. My child's been well prepared for the next school year, and my child receives useful feedback about their work. It's a kind of a Likert scale from strongly agree to strongly disagree. See generally positive responses here. There's a couple folks kind of living in the neutral area, and certainly reflect some areas to zoom in on a little bit more specifically, generally at the campus level. Lindsay,
So you do have these
Yes,
by
yes, ma'am.
campus, so
That's
you
correct.
can analyze them?
That's right. Yep. Second area, so student and staff well-being. Again, my child has a sense of belonging at their school. Looks forward to going to school. Adults at my child's school treat my child with respect. The school is responsive to my family's culture and language. My child feels connected to the adults at their school. My child's school is a safe place to learn. And finally, on community connectivity. The school keeps me well informed about my child's progress in school. The school is very good at staying in touch with me regarding all aspects of their educational experience, letters, phone calls, and emails. Sign up for e-news. The school encourages me to be an active partner with the school in educating my child, and I feel welcomed and invited in my child's school. we know these last two are certainly areas that were also iterated through the strategic direction work, that community and connectivity aspect being big. So kind of switching gears, looking at staff. We've got roughly around 2,000 staff members, so this is 557 of those staff members. You see the breakout of instructional versus non-instructional or non-teaching staff there at the bottom. And then on the right side, it's just a numerical breakdown of how many staff per specific campus there. In general, I'm satisfied with my current job. My work is valued by my supervisor. I have the resources I need to get my work done. I find my work interesting. I find my work satisfying, and I find my work challenging. I will say that these items have been selected over the last couple of years from different kind of workplace satisfaction surveys. And so while some of them seem generally simple, they're kind of an established way to get at this concept. And if I didn't state it, these are anonymous surveys.
Right.
And to your question, Dr. Manold, parents can submit a response on behalf of each individual kid if they've got multiple students.
Oh,
Or they can
okay.
submit it as kind of an amalgamation of their student experience. Either one is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are parents or staff allowed, is there a spot for them to comment?
There are comments. Yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah. And they leave them.
I'm sure they, yeah, that's good, that's good.
Yeah. I enjoy collaborating with my colleagues. I'm still on the staff survey. My supervisor trusts me. I trust my supervisor. I am encouraged to express my concerns openly. It's a little bit of a reversal on the next question. I'm hesitant to speak up because of fear of retaliation. We would hope to see do not agree, the higher mark there. So you kind of see a flip there. And I have authority to make decisions necessary for my day-to-day work. We call that empowerment. The thing we're about around here. I feel safe at work. I feel welcomed at work. Good work is recognized by my campus and department. There are opportunities for me to grow professionally in GISD. I'm encouraged to share my ideas openly, and I'm committed to GISD's vision, mission, and beliefs. What I will say about the parent staff survey, at the district level, we try to identify trends and see are we missing a mark somewhere? Could we see maybe a stronger sense of connection or belonging or so forth? What we recognize is we've got 19 campuses, and that is us. And so really trying to support our campus level efforts regarding the specific needs that they may have, whether it's communication, whether it's some kind of a rule or a policy we've had to live with for a little while that hampered connection and so forth. So as far as the next steps with this, certainly influences our work and our improvement planning, influences our work in supporting campus level improvement efforts as well. So switching gears, learner profile survey. So this sounds like a new word, that is, but it's not necessarily new work necessarily. So this is previously the student experience survey. So this is the survey that's administered to any willing 3rd through 11th graders. It's previously the student experience survey, and kind of what we recognized through just our work with this survey is that the questions that we're asking are aligned to our learner profile domains. And so we felt that it was appropriate to essentially rebrand it and continue to use it just under a little bit different title and with different domains. And we'll look at those in just a moment. But parents and students are allowed to preview the questions, and really most of them are statements that a student responds to how frequently they observe a situation or how frequently they feel about something. So 0 is never, 3 is always. It is administered in both English and in Spanish. And there's an opt-out process. I'm not sure if I caught that or not. So response rates and questions, just real quick. Pretty strong response rates, elementary and middle school. High school's been sitting at 80%. It's not bad. The goal is 85%.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty strong response. These are the 4 domains that the questions are sorted into. Intrapersonal learner profile skills. So the language from the learner profile that you may recognize: developing self-knowledge and personal responsibility, adapting and persevering, interpersonal, communicating, collaborating, building and model respectful relationships, and then cognitive learner profile skills, creating and innovating, obtains knowledge through inquiry and exploration, applies critical thinking, and then the last one is environmental. The ability of the school to offer a learning environment where students can develop their learner profile traits and essentially learn. So how is it used? Campus staff are provided 2 tools for analyzing the data. They're provided basically a raw roster for them to do with what they please. They're also provided a visualization tool that's kind of filterable. They can filter by grade level, by demographic area, sort by teachers, and so they're offered kind of both of those tools, and the campuses use whichever one is most suited for their use. They do use it to identify trends in grade levels and student groups and set campus level goals and improvement efforts. Counselors use the information as part of their comprehensive program to create data-informed goals, whether that's the counseling program or based on individual student needs. Campus counselors identify and plan for specific student needs, taking care not to overgeneralize one single data point. And that's kind of the thing we have to be really careful about. This is it is individualized, data, right? One student's one line, and when we see their responses, and the counselors use that information, counselors use that as one data point in their understanding of that student's needs, just so it's not overgeneralized, because it is one day. It's one day towards the end of the year, and so, but it's definitely used just with caution. All right, so the highest and lowest rated questions for elementary school students. And I will say we see higher rates of response from our elementary students, so whereas our high school students generally seem to be a little bit more critical. Highest rated, I have learned new things this year. This is a new one. So that's a neat one to see that our elementary kiddos are recognizing their own learning. I have a friend at my school who cares about me, and my school is a safe place to learn. So neat to see that. However, the lowest rated, and this is the same low rating from last year. I will say, however, it's higher than the score last year. I think 1.45 or so was last year's rating. It's up to 1.78. But at my school, kids are kind to each other. That's the lowest rate. If I'm upset with a friend, I share how I feel so we can work it out. When I'm angry, I can use a calming strategy to make myself feel better. I think there's some insight right there, right? Yeah. No doubt. I think we could probably see some correlations to the longer-term effects of kind of the social interruption we have with COVID. And humans are still adjusting.
Yeah, those 2 things are hard.
Those are hard. Let's not ask the adults here.
Those things are hard.
No doubt. No doubt. But just interesting to see. Highest and lowest for middle school students. So I have a core group of friends at my school who care about me. Raising a middle schooler, that's pretty darn important. I'm glad to see that. An adult in my school cares about me. There is at least one adult at my school that I feel safe going to for help if I need it. And then similar trend with our middle school students. At my school, students are kind. My classrooms are places we start to see some similarities, both with elementary and high school with our middle school students. My classrooms are places where I can learn without distractions or interruptions from my classmates. That was always my issue too. It was my classmates that disrupted me. Well, when my friends and I aren't getting along, I share how I feel and we work it out. That's low rated. It's tied with when I'm feeling sad, angry, and frustrated, I do something healthy like calming and coping strategies to feel better. So similar with our elementary students. And then finally, high school. I have a core group of friends at my school who care about me, highest rated. I'm aware of my strengths.
That's good.
An adult at my school cares about me. Low rated, similar in the environment aspect. I feel comfortable utilizing the restroom in my school without concern. This last year, this was also a concern. We know that's been a lot of attention paid to that at the campus level and support at the district level as well. So it remains an area to keep our eyes on. My classrooms are places where I can learn without distractions or disruptions from my classmates. And when I have trouble with my schoolwork, I can ask an adult on campus for help. So just some high-level overviews. Just a reminder, you guys have kind of the full list of questions and ratings and sorts and so forth in your email as well. Another question, or a couple questions that I think are unique to tease out are future plans. And now these are just purported future plans from students. My current plan after high school is attend a 4-year college university at 54%, attend a 2-year college university 8%, military 3%, attend a technical college 4%, enter the workforce or personal is 8%, and undecided is 23%. So it's kind of interesting to see the future's eyes from the students. And then looking at connection as well. I feel most connected at my school through athletics at 54%, fine arts at 20%. I don't feel connected is 13%. CTE is 6%, core curriculum 3%, advanced academics 3%, clubs 3%, and then none of the above 12%. I would like to know what they do feel connected through if it's none of the above. What is the thing, and is it passing periods? Hope it's not bathrooms. All right. So just a couple of pieces on the learner profile survey. I know we talked about how it's used. This is also a tool that we have campuses kind of experimenting with different uses. We have campuses that are administering it multiple times a year to try to get a little bit better picture. And we also have campuses that are utilizing it with staff as well as students to kind of see a correlation between, okay, well, staff report this way, how do the students report? And so the trend and the usefulness of this tool and kind of the similar tools are growing. Popularity seems kind of a weird word, but they're finding a lot of value at the campus levels with this information. It's telling. I mean, it's super telling. Want to know how things are going? Ask the kids. Guys, that's what I've got for you regarding parent and staff surveys. Before we kick it over to Landon and crew for kind of bond updates and so forth, just thank you all for engaging in conversation and enduring the conversation. If there's any questions that, whether it's now, later, or when you leave, if you've got questions about any of the information shared here or in the weekly, please don't hesitate to shoot me an email or reach out. I'm happy to give whatever answers that I can for you. So,
Great.
Thank you so much.
thank you.
Very interesting.
You bet.
Yeah.
All right. I was about to say, we're shift gears or change lanes. It's like changing highways. Go to a completely different place with this. So, yeah, reset the brain and let's talk about a different topic. So, got Kirk Campbell and Jennifer Hanna up here to help facilitate this conversation. Would love to have Jimmy Jones here as well, our director of construction. He's not able to be here. So if there's questions or remarks that we need to take back to him, I'm happy to jot those down. So our purpose for this presentation is actually a two-part presentation. The first part is, as Lindsay mentioned in the very beginning, this time of year in July, we want to come back and present to all of you just an update on everything associated with Bond 2021. In this case, it includes technology and construction. So you'll hear an update on those two topics, and would like to make a pattern of doing that every year. So we'll start with that. So it's a look back at the status of everything that we have in play, and then we're going to take a little shift and talk about what we're seeing as future trends, patterns for the future, and as you saw in your weekly right before the break, talking about recommending you all to consider convening, authorizing the superintendent to convene, there's a lot of words in there, a citizens advisory committee, as what we're seeing with these trends and well, you'll see in some of the data, especially when we get into the August workshop, we're a growing community, right? So let's start with, so just a real quick recap of, and we won't go through all of these because we're going to go through in a little more detail, but just a reminder of Proposition A and Proposition B from Bond 21. You've seen this slide probably a million times. The Proposition A was everything associated with constructing new facilities and had a smattering of security in it as well. Proposition B was everything associated with refreshing our technology pieces. And so we'll unpack these in just a second. The one thing I want to, the very first bullet though, the construction of 2 new elementary schools, that's going to be the one that's not unpackable because we're only constructing 1 new elementary school. We didn't construct the second, and I'm sure you've heard repeatedly why, and Kirby's going to actually go into a little bit more detail about some of the escalations that impacted our inability to do that school. But the need for that school remains. And so the urgency to get serious about talking with our citizens about where we are is paramount. Okay? All of the projects are on track though. So we're going to start off, I'm going to kick things over to Kirby, and he's going to walk you through the construction projects. And like we always say, feel free to stop and ask questions as we go. I know time is of the essence, so we'll go relatively quickly. So if you have questions you want to stay for the end, that's fine as well.
Yeah, so with the passing of the 2021 bond, right now we got $342 million worth of bond activity under contract. And we kind of shared this with the CAC at the last CAC meeting updates we had. We kind of shared this information as we go along with them. So they've seen some of this. And these are some of the projects that we have in place that are either already completed or in progress. And you know, the big one right now is the Future Ready Complex, Elementary 11, the San Gabriel Elementary, in the new Benola. So those are the three major ones that are under construction that will be finished up in the summer of 2024, ready for the fall 2024 school year. As we see, Elementary 12 right now is on hold, and we're in the process of High School 3 design. Now, in the 2021 bond was not funded for the construction of High School 3, just the design fees for High School number 3. Right now in progress, we have the Ford and Ford's HVAC units going in. We've been working on all summer to get those new units installed and up and running. We got some of them coming online as we speak right now, and the rest of them will be online by the end of July to be ready for the 1st of August to be finished up on those HVAC units. The GHS re-roof is in process. We started that actually in February, and that will be finished up within the next couple of weeks there, for an expected August finish date for that. The redesign of the knoll to the new frost. Once again, that was in the 2021 bond, was for fees for the design to change old Benold into the new frost. Now, in the 2021 bond is not the fees for the construction of that, but just for the design of that process. And so that process is ongoing. And then we have the wonderful, the ag barns. So the Eastview ag barns, if you haven't been out there, take a chance and drive by Eastview. It's coming along. And it's almost there. It's almost, you can taste it almost, right? So it's getting close. We've had a little snag with direct energy a little bit. So we'll figure that out. And so projected finish date September 1st, which is a little bit later than what we expected, but direct energy kind of slowed us up there. So at that point, at the 1st of September, we'll take the animals from the GHS Ag Barn, transport those over to Eastview, and then tear down the Eastview GHS Ag Barns and start construction there for the finish of that in spring of 24 for the GHS Ag Barns. Portables. So with all the growth we're experiencing, you know, Georgetown hadn't really had a history of adding portables. We've already tried to stay ahead of construction and to be able to build new campuses, but growth has outpaced our opportunity to build new schools, and so we have to kind of go to your second selection would be to add portables to some of our existing campuses. And so right now, you know, we added the one portable to Wolf Ranch in January. We have 2 more going in right now at Wolf Ranch, so we'll have a total of 3 at Wolf Ranch. We have portables going in at Eastview. So we have 1 portable going in at Eastview. We have 1 portable going in at Cooper, and we have 2 portables going in at Wagner. So those are some of our higher kind of growth areas, and you'll see in some of the charts. Now, Cooper may be a little bit different. You'll see on the charts there some of the growth there, but they got a lot of special programs at Cooper which demand a portable. If you kind of look at their numbers, you'll say maybe they're not in the yellow or the red right away, but because of their programs there, the way that bill is utilized, it demands a portable to be added to that site there. So any questions about portables and going in? Now these portables were not funded under any of the bond funds. So this was kind of taken out of basically elementary of 12 funds. Portables are very expensive to buy, purchase, install, secure, and so they're not cheap to set up. So you got to do all the electrical, you got to do all the fire protection, the security, the fencing. you gotta have all these things installed. Gotta get approval from the city, permits, and all these things that go with that. So, so when you add a portable, it's not an easy process, it's not a short process, it is not a cheap process. So, probably future portables, maybe at Mitchell and Williams Elementary. So we're looking at those to maybe even, in the fall, maybe have to drop a portable on both of those campuses there.
So did you say that the bond money for elementary 12 is what's helping pay for this?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct. And you've probably seen some of these in the board
Oh, yes.
updates coming through. Just real quick, picture below, you see where that is? I mean, that's coming along pretty good. You kind of see where everything's starting to fill in there. The Future Ready Center, that one's,
Wow.
man, that one's looking, got to see some inside
Yeah.
photos last week of the Future Ready, and man, it's really coming along.
You guys
And
like
then you
the,
see the ELC down there at the bottom down
do
there.
you like the lime green choice?
Yeah.
that's
gorgeous. It's our new high school color.
Yeah, the maroon roofs and the lime green walls, we just wanted to be noticeable. So yeah, so this is, it kind of leads into what Webb was talking about earlier about those certifications, that IBC, what this will really bring on. And then San Gabriel Elementary, and you'll see the first thing that always kind of goes in, you see the cafeteria, and then you see the gym, so, and those are going in first. So, but kind of what led up, what we experienced as we built these projects and continue to build these projects, and what we kind of led up in early, right after the bond, everybody kind of knows this, all the inflation go up, the cost of construction went up crazy amounts, the delay in getting materials, and we kind of saw this start with, the PPI, which is a lot of what you will call diesel fuel, concrete, cement, building materials. We all saw that wood went up like 100% early on. Then roofing materials went crazy. Then glass went crazy. And so like every construction element took their turn of getting a big increase. And so all those, you'll see that from 20 to 22, the increase in cost, what we experienced that I don't think anybody was expecting. And then as we go on beyond from 22 to 23, we still see the cost increasing. And we know it kind of leveled off, but it leveled off at a super high level, right? So I don't think we'll ever see pre-kind of COVID, I would say that, kind of pre-COVID construction numbers and construction costs. I don't think that's not in our future anytime. It's continued to rise with inflation, interest rates continue to increase. We'll continue to see that. And wages, as we know. So, and this is what kind of those conclusions for all those increases come up with wage rates, construction costs, inflation. So, and just kind of what I talked about. And then our future projects will have to, we'll have to address that, right? And we'll have to make note as we get into future bonds. When we do that to build newer buildings, we got to take into consideration that what it costs to build 3 years ago is not what it costs to build today. It's just not there, and we can't go back. And so we have to take that under advisement when we start doing future bonds. High School 3, I kind of briefly talked about that. Was the design for High School 3 was in 2020 on bond, not the cost to build it, but just the design. So we completed a lot of the visioning for High School 3. We're doing some geotechnical drillings out there and getting all that information back, so we do some finalization on the design of the High School 3. We've been working closely with the city, been meeting with them monthly, especially about this site here, because we have to get water, sewer, power, and electric and gas all out there that doesn't exist right now. So that's a big undertaking, but we have to work closely with the city to make sure those things can happen in the next several years, to make sure when we start construction, whenever that shall be, that those are there.
And this is the site that's off DB Wood?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. This is a site that's off of DB Wood. And so the city just approved a couple weeks ago the zoning for we had to rezone that, and they just tentatively approved that rezoning for that area there. Land updates. We have a land committee group that meets monthly, and we have 2 board members that are on that meeting. And so some of these items here that we talk about on a monthly at our monthly meetings, but we have the acre kind of high school site there at DB Woods, which also includes a 14-acre site, kind of a stakeholder for an elementary campus on that facility, and then a 35-acre middle school site there off of DB Woods Road. We have the park side on the river with the elementary site there off Leander Road down there. That site it's kind of ready to build on, but right now we're just, we have it in place, so when the time comes, we're ready to build. Once again, that's kind of on the west side of 35. And then the Palmer Ranch site, which is another site that we have on hold, and it's up there kind of off of Ronald Reagan, next to the new Benode up in that area there, and that new subdivision they're building up there. And then we're in the process of trying to secure, what you kind of see all this is the land development here. So what we're trying to secure is some property in the southeast quadrant, right? And so we've been working to secure some land in the southeast quadrant, because as you see with the growth that you'll see really from Mitchell, McCoy, Wagner, and Eastview, kind of those areas there that feed into that, we really need some development on the southeast side. And we're working right now to secure a site for an elementary and a middle school in that area, but we're not quite we're not quite there to say where it is, or where we still got to get some diligence to go through to get there. Any questions so far? I know I talked quite a bit, but fast. Transportation and technology and some security projects updates. So real quick, I'll talk about our buses and our white fleet, which is our maintenance fleet. So with the 2021 bond, we had about $2.5 million. We're in the process of finishing out our white fleet purchases, which we've received all those, and most of our buses. We got 7 buses that will be due in actually the beginning of August. If we can find drivers for them, that would be even better. So, your friends and neighbors, come see us.
What's the white fleet?
Do it now.
The
The white fleet, that's our maintenance fleet, our plumbing trucks, and electrical trucks, and vans, and the grounds crew equipment. So yeah, we purchased about 9 vehicles for the white fleet to replace and update those. And as we continue to grow, we got to continue to add. We add campuses, we got to add plumbers and electricians, and kind of go there, down that route there. So, any questions so far about that? I'm trying to back over.
Yeah, I like to think of those like those, the white vehicles with little badges on the side. We call buses yellow fleet, and white, or just start buying blue vehicles. So just I've learned through my career not to talk technically about a lot of these things because it gets a little boring. So I'm going to go real high level on some of this. Everything is on track with the technology projects. The thing I like to always remind the trustees and others when I get to the chance to explain the difference between what a bond-funded project for technology is differently than construction is that when construction, the funds become available and you start working and you spend those money and the building gets built. With technology, we secure the funds and then we live with the technology until it reaches the end of its usable life, and then we have the funds available to replace it so that our students aren't working with 7, 8, 9-year-old Chromebooks that wouldn't be working, right? They don't work after that point. So like you'll see, like our student Chromebook replacement, it might stand out to you that the project doesn't start until April of 24. But that's because those devices have that much useful life. They reach their end of update and useful life at that point, and then we just replace them all. But the good news is, thanks to Bond 21, we secured the funds to be able to do that, and we're not going to be worried in April about how we would do that. Does that make sense? So that's kind of a rinse and repeat with the way each of these projects are done. Some are complete, obviously, the security sensitive ones, the PA bell clock system, security camera servers, those were of top importance, so they got done quickly. And then others that you might see language that's unfamiliar to you, for example, interactive displays. These are these that you see around the room. They're in all of our classrooms. And we don't have those don't reach end of life all at the same time. So we do those as what's called replace on fail. So we hold that money in the bond and we replace things as they fail there. And these are relatively new to us. We bought these in bond just before. They're lasting. They're really holding up, standing the middle school students can't break it, it's a pretty good product, right?
Better.
They're holding up really, really well, so we may end up, just, being able to ride that out a little bit
Hope
further.
they're not listening.
What's
Right.
that?
I hope they're not
Hope they're not
listening.
listening. Don't touch it.
They know.
That's a bad thing.
Yeah, same with printers and copiers, those don't fail all at the same time, don't get replaced all at the same time, just funds available to make those replacements. Differently though, in this cycle than in other cycles, is the effort to replace our network, is the nickname for replacing the access points, the switches, all the stuff in the closets that, it lasts a little longer than these endpoint devices, but when it's time to replace it, it's time to replace it, and it's not cheap. So those projects are in progress, getting replaced. We're also revising our district fiber strategy, our district internet strategy, and that's again more construction-sized projects. We're running fiber to buildings and things like that. But making good progress on all of that. So now, any questions about technology, security? I mean, those are generally not questions about it, but if you have some, please ask. I want to switch over to really the second part of this presentation, because when we started here, we wanted to make sure you saw that what we committed to doing in Bond 2021 is on track, except for still 12, but you got that story. And now I want to talk about what are we doing to look forward ahead of the bond that we're currently in progress with, right? And so wanted to share with you guys a little bit about the cycle, the way Georgetown ISD works when it comes to staying ahead of the best we can in a fast growth community, these needs. And so this graphic represents this ongoing process, this ongoing cycle of review. We've nicknamed assess, study, and review, where we assess the facilities needs, we study demographers' reports about the trends in the area, and review our financial data. And we're going to talk a little bit more about each one of those in just a second. That's ongoing. What you don't see on the graphic here is the month-to-month, week-to-week, almost day-to-day work that also happens in these categories. Kirby mentioned the board's land committee meeting. I know Dr. Reynolds on that. And so that's a once-a-month meeting to come together and talk about where do we need land? Where are we in the process of acquiring that land? It's a very interesting set of meetings. We meet monthly internally, this team and others that aren't in the room, on the bond projects, get way more detailed updates on where things are, what's getting in the way of progress, what's this, which contractor's fighting with which contractor, stuff that don't really matter too much, but we have to have those conversations. We do that monthly. We also have a monthly meeting with the city of Georgetown. Kirby and Jimmy meet with our city representatives and try to stay ahead of things that we need to be in cahoots about with regards to roads and infrastructure, and where are you guys going to put that road, and are you going to have gas over there? And that's been a relatively newish development. Started that this year, and it paid dividends. It's been amazing because we're all on the same page, and they're getting a lot more insight into what we're bringing with regards to our hopes and dreams, and physically what we're going to build, and then they're telling us a little bit more in advance what they know to be true or what they hope to be true about some areas around the city. So that's a great collaboration that we gain a lot from. And then of course, every quarter we bring the members of our CAC back together and do an update on all of these projects for our Citizen Action Committee for Bond 21. And they get to ask us detailed questions and unpack those projects that they worked so hard to determine and bring forward to the Board of Trustees as a recommendation for a bond, right? So it's always nice to have that group back together, let them see the results of that work. Every once in a while, this process sort of results in us saying, okay, it's time. It's time to come to our board and ask them to consider the opportunity to convene a new Citizens Action Committee to review all of the information that we're seeing, all the data and things that we're feeling, that we're seeing, that we know. We know that that's not something we do annually, it's periodic, and as those needs begin to show up. And so we're really at that point where we're going to be asking that you all consider authorizing the superintendent to convene a new CAC. And in doing so, that CAC then would begin to work with all of us to research what those needs are, and then decide whether they want to recommend to you calling a bond. And I'll go so far as to say calling a bond for May. But before we do that, let's talk about each one of these little pieces. So Kirby's going to talk a little bit about what goes into our review process for facilities.
So the TEA requires each district to do a facility assessment, at least have one on file for every 5 years. And so this year was the end of our 5th year, so we contracted with Park Hill Mocha to do a facility assessment of all our facilities, all the buildings, all the classrooms, and all the facilities that the district owns. And so they will go through, and they will go through each facility and get an aging of the roof, the floors, the HVAC system, the electrical systems, the fire systems, the layout of the campus. Can the campus be expanded, right? Is there possibility there where we could add another wing onto a campus? And so they look at all that. They'll do a very, very in-depth review of each campus, which they're currently doing right now. And they've set up meetings with some of the principals and talk to the principals, kind of what happens on your campus, so they kind of get an understanding of what goes on each campus, because each campus operates maybe a little bit differently, so you can't just look at a layout and say, well, this is the way it needs to be, but each campus can operate a little bit differently, so they try to speak and interview the staff and some of the principals there from each of the campus to get that insight to that. And then, like I said, and they also address, a lot of these people with Park Hill Mocha, this is kind of their niche on what they do, and so some of them are retired educators. They hire, so to get insight on some of their input on classroom development and what's most efficient for a school or school building. So they'll kind of go through that process and give us some feedback, not just on the physical side of the building, but kind of more or less our mental take on that building, right? And then they'll put together a nice dashboard that each board member will have access to be able to look, and so you can see what a building looks like, what's the age of that building, when's that building going to need a new roof or HVAC systems, flooring updates, and then you, as a board member, be able to have access to some of that, and we'll be able to see that. So that's what we're doing right now. That probably won't be finished till probably around September, October, as they go through that. They go through that process.
So the report will be out in September, October?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll echo what Kirby was saying. I think sometimes it warrants repeating. We talk so much about bonds being about growth and future development for construction of new facilities, but the facilities that we're currently operating out of, that's where the term aging and evolving creeps in, right? Carpets wear out, paint chips. The best process for keeping buildings up is to use bond funds for aging and evolving, as opposed to dipping into your operating expenses. Sometimes you can't help it. Sometimes things break and you don't know that, but to the degree possible, we get ahead of that. And then again, dealing with the inequities that sometimes creep in with a building that's got a phenomenal learning environment that meets, and then some that are older that need to be addressed as well.
Yeah, and just a really good example is probably going to be Forbes as we go forward. So Tibbetts got renovated, got the new Minot, Wagner's pretty good new school. So, and then you got Forbes. So you got to look at Forbes and what inequities do we have at Forbes can we correct to make sure the students that go to Forbes get the same opportunity that they're getting at Minot and Tippett and Wagner for their facility side of things.
Similarly, if the board decides that it's time for a bond, and that bond includes a third high school, and a lot of ifs in there. If we have 2 existing high schools that would need attention, right, to have some parity across. So there are lots of things that go into that. So it's not just about building a new building, right? It's addressing the building that we currently have. So on the assess component of it, we always take a look at the financial side, right?
Right. So we just wanted to give you a really brief update on our financial review. As Landon said, we are looking at this not just at times like this throughout the year. We're looking at our finances and trying to decide, where our capacity is. And as you know, even last month you approved for us to refund some bonds. So we're strategically looking at ways that we can reduce our debt and increase our capacity for the future. So that's one thing. We also have very good credit ratings with both Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So that's in our favor as far as that helps us get a more beneficial interest rate. So that, of course, also saves us money. The projects that we've been talking about today, the 2021 bond projects, all those bonds have been sold. So we don't have any bonds to sell that have been authorized by the voters. We've sold them all, so we've got that kind of behind us. And we did do that without raising the tax rate. So we have kept our tax rate constant. We like to do that. We do know that our tax values are increasing. So as our tax values are increasing, we keep the rate at the same rate. We will still have more capacity as we can raise more taxes. So we are trying to look at all those factors. We are in that special legislative session. We know that's going to potentially affect us as well. But we are monitoring it regularly and running scenarios as far as capacity for any kind of future bond that we might decide on. That's really all I have.
And then finally, the last piece was study. And just a super fast look at this. You all are used to getting the demographer's report quarterly. That's coming at the next board meeting in July. And so, what's that? Monday, yeah. That's right. Yeah, just in case.
And earliest one.
So yes, Monday, you'll get the full report. So we're not going to do that here today, but the point of this is to remind that we do review that information. We use that information to inform our future look at where the growth is going to be happening, try to stay ahead. And the last bullet on here, I definitely can't gloss over, is to prepare for a conversation with our community about rezoning. I know, right? That, a couple things that want to.
Stephanie's so excited.
Yeah, I know. We're going to do that anyways because we're opening new schools next fall, right? So it's inevitable that some rezoning conversations begin this fall. Try to communicate to all of our families as early in the spring semester in January as we possibly can. Where their students will be zoned to go to school. It gives us the opportunity to look at some pressure relief within our existing system in zoning anyways, but the caveat and caution to that always is, don't rezone multiple times to solve a temporary problem, right? It's better to do portables. I know we all hate portables. It's better to do portables. It's better to work with programming and things like that than it is to move families around multiple times, right? So we take that very seriously. And that's the commitment, is to do that as few times as possible. Okay, so just a quick glance, just as a shock to the system, we're now, and we've leapfrogged back up to being the second fastest community with regards to home closings. And so I'm sure that's when we talk to Bob Templeton next week. He'll explode all this information out into graphs, and that you'll see where those homes are. And you can imagine a lot of them are in the southeast quadrant and areas like that. So where does that lead us to now? We are back to this place where the recommendation will be that you guys spend some time considering this information and leading to a conversation around convening a Citizens Action Committee. So what that looks like from a timeline perspective, let me get it up on here. Workshop, that's where we are right now. Sort of planting that seed of thought and looking forward to the July 17th meeting with the demographer to get the full picture of our growing city and growing enrollment. We'll have a workshop on August 7th in which we'll bring you an update to the progress on the facilities plan that Kirby discussed from Park Hill Mocha. Not sure exactly everything we'll have at that time. We're hoping a lot. But we'll be able to give you some insight. And during that time, we'll also talk about outlining the considerations for convening a CAC. How do you get this? Who gets involved? What do those timelines look like? What is their role? What is their charge? That's the kind of information we'll talk about at that time. So be thinking about what you want shared in that presentation as well. If you so choose, on the August 21st board meeting, you would need to have an action item to authorize the superintendent to call that CAC after having had time to consider it. So that would be your timeline for that. And then if that is something that we so choose to do, the CAC begins to meet, a series of about 6 meetings. They make a recommendation around January or in January to here's the projects we believe would go. And then you have until February 16th to decide to call for a May election. Okay. Reason why May? We don't usually do these in May, right? We usually do them in November. You saw those escalation slides, a 6-month head start on some of those costs and a 6-month head start to get ahead of construction to open schools for all that growth is a big benefit to the school district. Waiting until November is a little scary thought for us to wait that long and have that much of a delay. It's much more expensive. We know that to be true, and we also know that it's going to put us opening schools at weird times that they're not going to be useful for us to relieve pressures.
And I just want to add, a CAC may is just the opportunity to have the conversation, right? So a CAC may not come back with a recommendation for a bond. And so we just want to invite community members into the conversation and to dig in the information with us, both the financial information, the demographic information, and the facilities information. And they may not recommend a bond. They may recommend more time to study that sort of thing. So convening a CAC does not guarantee calling for a recommendation for a bond. And then of course, even if they did recommend a bond to you guys, it would be in your hands. But a CAC is not a guaranteed pathway to a bond. It's just getting a group of citizens together to study the information. But we think it's time to invite the community into the conversation. And honestly, our CAC meeting the week before the break was very much saying, as we were presenting much of what we shared with you guys, they were saying, are we at the point where we're ready to invite more people in and because some of them are some of you, I remember Jen was on it, some of them have done 2 or 3 bonds and are very much, they're kind of reading the tea leaves and saying it feels like it's time to invite more people into this. And we were saying, absolutely, we're actually having that conversation with the team. And so we just want to invite more people into the conversation.
Okay, that's the last official words from us. What questions, thoughts, discussion?
Thank you.
Looking forward to hearing from Bob next week. Looking forward to the August workshop where we can give you a little bit more information. Hopefully you've had some time to think about this and will ask us some driving questions that will get us ready for helping you make a decision on what you want to do at the August board meeting. So.
Okay, so closing us out, we'll see you guys with our team on Monday at the regular board meeting. I think the only thing on there connected to today's workshop is a presentation from Mr. Templeton related to the demographer's report. So buckle up for that.
Okay, so you just said, Wes did a great job with the report. Will that be presented to the community on the 17th?
We weren't planning to.
Okay. Is there time to do something for the community?
Well, we were waiting until we had a more complete answer, once we actually get the rest, because that was a very partial picture of what we know now. It's not complete, and so it was all very good news, and I'm happy to celebrate that and to share it with the community. But there's still a lot more information to come and to really kind of consider before we'll have, I think, a better complete picture.
When there's star data too.
So even the survey information will be more elaborate?
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were talking specifically.
I thought he did a great job with the entire report, and I just think the community would benefit from the information. So just something to think about.
You bet. And next week we'll send out the superintendent email. So maybe between the superintendent report and that email, maybe between the two finance committees, I'll follow up with you.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, you guys.